So my speech is on galactic multidimensionality, and we'll get started here in a second. Do you think you can move a chair? Maybe we can put a chair over here too.
Do you not need a projector?
I don't need the projector now. Thank you. Let's just get this situation. Okay, so my last talk I actually talked about a lot of multidimensionality, but we're going to continue on in this talk. We're going to talk about the different ET races and some of the experiences that I've had with them, and how we can work with them, and how we can connect to them, which is very important right now for this planet and for the ascension of humanity. A lot of ET races have expressed to me that they want to help out humanity, but they also are waiting for humanity to do the sacred work and open up themselves to connecting. So this has been my experience. And throughout the years, they showed me that many people have this dense layer around their aura, and this dense layer is created up of, unprocessed emotions, a lot of dense energies, even toxins in the body that give off a lower frequency, and this blocks humanity from connecting with the higher dimensions and the light beings. So they expressed to me that I needed to get the message across to how to clear this so that we can connect. So this has been a lot of my work for years now, encouraging people to, really start to understand that each emotion, each part of themselves speaks to them, whether it's through thoughts, whether it's through feelings, and actually interacting with such and learning how your system works, because this physical body is divine technology, and many have lost the ancient knowledge and codes of how it actually functions. So this has been a big kind of block for humanity, because they don't even understand how their physical body functions, much less their energy system, their organs, their aura. So they're not aware of how to connect even to themselves, much less to other beings. And originally, we were all multidimensional. In Atlantis, or what you would call Lemuria, there's many different names for this ancient civilization, we were able to go in and out of our bodies, we were able to travel realms, and we were also able to, speak to other beings and time travel. So we had a lot of abilities back then. And I feel that we're reascending into these abilities now as we understand how important it is to understand the function of this physical body that is the original divine temple. In fact, all religious temples were based off of the physical body. And this is what Christ said when Christ said, meant that he said, I am the temple. He was saying that his physical body is the temple. So each one of our bodies, they're sacred temples. And within these temples holds the Spirit of God, which is our soul energy. So I'm going to explain a little bit today about how we can reconnect, and a little bit about the different ET races that I have encountered. So to get started with how to reconnect, it's really important to do the exercise I explained in my last talk, by the way. And it's a very simple exercise, and it might take a few tries to connect. And it's really important to do this, though, because once you do this, you'll understand how your system works, and you'll be able to connect to your soul, which is your higher self, and then other beings. So you visualize a golden tunnel, you visualize flying up that golden tunnel, and then you clear your mind, and you can focus on, let's say, your liver, and I do this all the time, and you ask your liver what it needs. Does it need a specific food? Does it need a specific light frequency, like blue, purple? And then you clear your mind and you wait for the thought to come through. And the thought will come through, and it will completely tell you what your liver needs. And so it's really important to start to connect to each part of ourselves. Once we've done that, we can then focus on speaking to ETs. But first we must put ourselves back together and light up our divine tech, the physical human body and the soul energy that flows through such. So It's really important to do this work, and after a little bit of time doing this work, then you can go ahead and connect to ET. So you focus on what star system or ships. I tell my system to scan for ships, and then I connect to the ship and speak to the ETs in the ship. So then I clear my mind, and I will interact just like I'm speaking now. I will interact and I will ask the different questions or just speak to them in general. And this works really well for telepathically connecting to ETs. And this method is amazing because after you practice it for a while, eventually you will be able to see ETs. I've had a lot of people I've worked with tell me that they saw ETs in their room after that, and in their dreams and physically. So once you start to have that faith in your system, and you start to have that trust in your system by doing these exercises over and over again, your system just completely starts to light up. And once it's lit up, you don't even have to do that exercise anymore. You will just see an ET or a spirit or an angel that will interact with you. So this is the way to reconnect up your system. And it's really important right now that we reconnect our systems up. So these are the first steps to ET contact that work really, really well. So I want to continue on. I've encountered like 200 different ET races. Some of them were benevolent to humanity. Actually, most of them were. There are definitely some that have fallen from the light. Recently, this last year and a half, I was speaking to the reptilians because I encountered them as a child. And I remember my first encounter with the reptilians in this physical body. I was actually in France, and I was sitting there and I was just doing this exercise with my aura, and I had brought in the rainbow aura. And I brought it in, and then suddenly I realized there were these beings around me, and I could physically see these beings. And this group of reptilians appeared, and they said, "We were drawn to you because of your light." And they asked me if they could step into my aura and that they wanted to tell me a story. So I told them that they could. They stepped into my aura, and as soon as they stepped into my aura, they completely transformed from being reptilian into these beautiful, beautiful divine creatures. And they told me that a long time ago, that when this system collapsed, when there was, quote, the fall of, everything, which is a fall in frequency, that everything started feeding off of each other. They were explaining to me that even people feed off of their own. They feed off of each other energetically. And they said that they also had got lost and fell from the light. And they were doing their best to survive, and that they wished to reascend into the light. And I was able to see how when they reascended into that light energy, they were beautiful, beautiful beings. So I always kind of kept that in my heart because I really like seeing beings reascend into the light. It's been my lifelong work, as I have also worked with very many earthbound souls that wander the planet of the dead, that are locked on this planet due to the fact they don't have enough light to ascend into the higher realms. So I kept that all of these years, and just recently, this last year and a half, some of the reptilian chieftains came to me and told me that they were actually working on reascending into the light, and that they were going to stop harvesting energy from humanity. So this was very, very much, this made me happy on all levels. And they said that, instead of trying to battle each other and battle them and everybody's fighting and everything is fighting, that we need to bring the energy back into ourselves and open up light portals so this to the higher 22D dimension. And this light was going to come through. It's going to bring the Earth's frequency up, and it's also going to recharge us so that, it's going to heal the plague of energy vampires that we have on this planet. And it's also going to help these races that fell at the same time as humanity fell a long time ago when there was that fall in frequency. And they said that they really wanted to reascend into the light. So this was their message to me. And I sincerely believe this because I've seen a lot of beings within this last year and a half come to me and tell me that they are willing to go back to the divine light. There's very many people also who have reptilian DNA. There's been a lot of DNA, DNA that's been instilled in humanity from different races. There's specific higher races that have done a lot of benevolent abductions to bring in light codes back into humanity that were lost a long time ago to help with the ascension. So this is playing out right now. And we have this beautiful ascension that's happening, but of course we also have all of the shadow of humanity coming up right now. That's why there's so much chaos. That's why there's so much insanity going on, because for thousands of years, the shadow, the dense energies it's there, but it didn't come to the surface, and now it's coming to the surface. And how we can deal with this is by lighting ourselves up, by connecting to ourselves, stepping into God consciousness, and then opening light portals so that light comes through and really, really lifts the frequency of the planet and humanity and all the races that have been trapped on this planet for thousands of years. And I really can't hold, it against them that everything is in survival mode and they're trying to survive. And not only humanity, but a lot of different races that fell from the light. So I really think that we need to look into these solutions rather than just being very judgmental or thinking that they should be completely destroyed or annihilated, because everything on this planet, a lot of it has fallen from the light. So this is some of the messages that I was giving to give to you guys. But to continue on, the reptilians also told me that the draconians were causing some damage, and I've been working on that with them because they're very intense. The draconians actually took DNA from the original dragons and from specific races to create their bodies, and they're some of the last ones that are they're being very stubborn. They don't want to completely step into redemption right now, and I've been interacting with them and speaking with them about this for around the last year and a half too, and they're completely they're trying to understand human emotion. They don't understand human emotion. They're very predatorial, so they're trying to understand emotion, and it's very confusing to them, so they're taking a longer time to step into the light. But we definitely can help with the quickening of this by bringing the light into the earth, which will then affect them, because they are stuck in the atmosphere. From what I was seeing shown in a different dimension, their ships are stuck in the atmosphere around Earth, in the magnetic layer around the planet. So that was expressed to me. And they also are in survival mode, and they feed on other races, including the reptilians, who aren't very fond of them. So this was something that the reptilians expressed to me, and they asked me actually to interact for them as an envoy or an ambassador to the draconians. So I actually, I think it was maybe like 4 months back, a draconian appeared in my room, and I interacted with him, and I told him, I said, that this needs to stop, the wars, the battles. And he was expressing to me, he was actually very kind, but he was expressing to me that they don't know about human emotions, so it's very hard for them to actually understand what's happening. As in their race, they tried to create bodies that were they thought by not having emotion, they were creating the toughest, most resilient bodies. So I explained to them, about the chakra system and about love and about these beautiful things and emotions, and I was channeling that to him, so I had this interaction with him. So I do feel that the draconians eventually, as the Earth's frequency continues to go up, they will have to definitely step into the light or completely leave this solar system, and that's their choice. So that's some of my experience with the draconians. I've actually throughout the years found them doing a lot of really intense stuff. I know that they have control of the dark side of the moon because I astraled there at one point, and there were these small pyramids. They were about this tall, the pyramids, and what I do when I get out of my body is I'll use the magnetic field of each moon, star, or planet to travel, to charge, then project to go. And I was going to Saturn, by the way, to get control over the temple of Saturn of time, because I wanted to really help with creating the timelines here on this planet. I understand how Saturn works and how it projects time and reality. So I set out on that journey, and I literally was going past the moon, and then something pulled me back, and then I was pulled into this small pyramid, and it tried to erase me and send me back to the earth, and I prevented it from doing so. And the draconians had control of the dark side of the moon, and they had all these little structures of pyramids, and any soul that was trying to get out would be completely pulled back. and then erased and sent back into their bodies to be in this cycle, so they wouldn't know what's happening. So I'm aware that they are doing that. They were doing that, but that was years ago when I experienced this. I probably experienced this when I was like, I think 26 years old or something. I'm really bad at time because I'm always going out of time. So it really, time evades me all the time. So I know that they're also, they're really scared of the Earth's frequency going up because they're scared of the divine light, and that's the divine light that can actually redeem them and save them and restore them into wholeness and heal them. So I do, I'm always very hopeful that they will choose that beautiful choice in the future, and if not, I'm also at peace with that. But to continue on, we also have the tall white ETs, and there's a lot of probably misinformation out there about the tall white ETs because they're very good beings, and I've worked with them a lot. I actually have tall white DNA within me, and they told me and showed me a lot of things. They showed me how they're taking a lot of people in ships, and they're actually relighting ancient DNA codes in them. So they're doing work to wake up the planet, and they actually consider the Draconians kind of a thorn to them because they're trying to awaken the planet, and then the Draconians try to keep it down. So it's a really interesting kind of thing how this works. But they said that they showed me about hybrid children. So they told me to collect information on this planet in a 3D human Is this working still? There. Yeah. In a 3D human experience, and then they asked me to go into the ships. So then I went into the ships, and I actually downloaded to the children my 3D human experiences so that they would understand how to live to the hybrid children, because they had a lot of hybrid ET children, by the way, that they were just putting on the planet to be born on this planet. And these children, they're very empathic, they're very gifted, and actually they speak through emotions and through, sending images and emotions and also energies. That's how they speak. They don't really speak physical language very well at all. They don't understand it very well because physical language is actually very primitive. Before the fall, we would send images and emotions and energies to each other, and via that way there was like no room for lying. There was no room for inauthenticity because we would feel each other and we would know the truth. And the beings back then, because it was before the fall, just didn't do those things that are very, very primitive. So I was asked to go on the ship and to download the information of how to, live on this planet and how to interact with people on this planet. So I did that for quite a few years. And at one point, the tall whites were telling me that they were actually taking people, full-grown people, to light up these ancient codes within them to help with the ascension. And they said that people, when they light up these codes in them, that people start to, they were having problems because they said that people were starting to pick up everything. Literally, they would pick up images, they would pick up voices from beings around them, even telepathy from other people around them, and that this was causing them to malfunction. So they were trying to figure out how to fix this. So they were working more on the children at a certain point because they were like, okay, the adults, who've been closed off their whole life, this is causing them to be unwell in the physical world once we do this work on them because of the fact that it's too much incoming for them and it's too overwhelming. So they were explaining this to me, and they were saying that's why they were doing more work on the children, and then they were trying to download the information of how to live on the planet into the children so the children would have that blueprint. So I've done this work for years with ET hybrid children, and as for myself, coming down here on this planet, it's been very hard for me to learn how people interact and also how to speak and many other things that were, are considered, normal on this planet. So it's been kind of an interesting journey for me because of that. But to continue on, right now what we have happening is we also have, we have the tall whites come in. We also have these beings that I call them the 22D Council of Light, and they are very precious to me. And they almost seem very wispy, and they have wings, and they're able to go into any dimension and into any realm, and they would be considered angelic ETs. I guess that's the right name for them, because ETs don't actually have names. They just know each other, and interdimensional beings, by sensing each other's frequency. They don't have physical language like we have here on this planet. So they sense each other's frequency, and that's how they know each other. Names are a very 3D thing, so sometimes it's really just interesting to be able to give these beings names. And these beings they've encircled the entire planet. They showed me recently, and they have wings, and they're very wispy, and they're probably like from 14 to 16 feet tall, and they told me they're the holders of the ancient blueprint of light. And they said that they were requested to come back to this planet and work on it by other ET races that were really working hard to help with the ascension, and also by other beings that were helping with the ascension. And there's a lot of different beings, by the way. I think we think a lot about ETs, but there's fairies. Fairies are trying to protect the forest. We have the Bigfoot, or the Sasquatch, which actually doesn't even come from this planet. It came to this planet to help protect the forest, and that's their natural habitats on other planets. So we have a lot of different beings trying to help out. We also have the elemental spirits. We have the leprechauns. There's many, many different levels of beings. So we have the spirit realms helping out with the ET beings in this ascension. And to go back, so these beings that hold what I call the 22D light codes, they have completely encircled the planet right now, and they've been coming in very strongly, including when we've been working together recently. And they said that the matrix system on this planet. So there's two matrix systems. There's the false light matrix system that was created up. How can I put this? That consists of the CDC, all these different organizations, the school systems, all these different systems. That's the false light matrix system. Then there's the original matrix system. They said the original matrix system was created so that if anything went wrong on this planet, if people, actually fell in frequency, would lock them in until they lifted their frequency. So then they showed me that like the pyramids and all the sacred architecture around the world is all joined, and it's joined to like the face on Mars and pyramids on Mars, and there's pyramids on different moons and different planets, and it's this ancient system. They said it's this the ancient original matrix system. That's probably the wrong word to use for it, because they said it's crystalline, and that we have crystals in our bodies, and these crystals in our bodies, and the crystalline system in the earth, and the crystalline system in these structures, that when we learn how to channel light, we're going to light up, and we're going to light up the entire system, and then we will be released from the system, because we're quarantined in the system right now until we actually light up ourselves and step into God consciousness and master ourselves. Then we can channel energies, and we have power over the 4 elements, and then we're given the power of the 5th element, which is spirit, which is God. And once we do so, we will go ahead and become portals of light, and we'll channel light into this entire system, which is an ancient system that the ancients used to travel planets, to teleport, to travel among the stars. And we all have this ability on this planet, but right now it's shut down because we are not mastering ourselves. We are not learning how our systems work, and we've lost that knowledge, and we're not stepping into God consciousness. And when we do, we're going to have these beautiful gifts that the ancients left here for us. So these beings from the 22 dimension were showing me how there's crystals in the pyramids, there's crystals in all of these different ancient structures, and it's one entire system. And when this system lights up, all the planets are actually going to ascend in frequency. And once all the planets ascend in frequency, the original matrix system that was created as sort of a lock there was a backup lock in case anything happened to quarantine everybody in. That's going to be released, and we will be free even from this cosmos, and we'll be free to go among the different cosmoses and universes, because that's originally how people used to be and beings used to be in this cosmos, just like the movie Superman. So that's what these beings were showing me. So they were showing me that humanity has, very infinite power, and they're start to discover this more and more and more as they unlock these beautiful codes within them. So right now these beings have completely created a circle around the earth to help bring the earth's frequency up. As they help bring the earth's frequency up, a lot more people will be waking up. So this is going to be happening, for the rest of this year and beginning of next year. It's going to get more and more intense, and that's why we just had the Georgia Guidestones completely be demolished, because that timeline is gone now. That frequency is completely collapsed. That timeline is gone. We've entered another frequency. This is why we had, the magnetic system open up of the Earth planet open up for 14 hours a day ago, is because of this. At the same time as a lot of different things that happen, like the sky is turning green in Dakota. This is all symbolic of certain timelines collapsing and higher timelines coming in and manifesting as the Earth's frequency goes up. And it's really, really important for all of us to do our self-work. And sure, we have the aid of all these beings, but in the end, it's also very important for us to find our divinity and to find our power within. And that's one of the greatest messages that all ET races have given me, that they wish to see humanity step into their power. And this is, they're helping on many levels. They're not going to let nuclear wars happen. There are certain things that they're not going to allow to happen. In fact, they showed me, there was a specific election. They showed me there would be a third world war if they let certain people in office. So they completely changed the timelines the day of the election so that would not happen. So they're also doing stuff to try to make sure that we don't go into any timelines of a third world war or nuclear catastrophe. So they're doing that work while that's giving us time to do work on ourselves and to really get ourselves into higher frequencies and step into ascension. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on now. And also the Oracle of Mars came to me. This Oracle was on the temple on Mars from in Earth time. I think he said it was like 3,000 years, and he actually came to me to tell me that we need to start to channel golden light to the children around the planet, because he said that all the children that are unhappy or suffering, he said they're creating charges of dense energy every moment that they're suffering. And he said he was really just had a lot of compassion for the children on this planet. And he said that we needed to release a lot of the dense karma that surrounds this planet, and humanity's getting a lot of dense karma because they're not treating their children right on this planet, and children are very precious. He said that we needed to start to channel them the golden light and rainbow light so that we can bring up their frequency and help heal them, because he said that children have a strong charge of energy, and every time they're hurt, they let out a strong charge of dense energy. And this is collecting on the planet. This is causing humanity to have negative karma because they're not treating their children right. So the Oracle of Mars was very, very passionate about this. In fact, when I was doing my interview at Gaia, he appeared, and when he appeared, the lights flickered, and I was holding crystals in my hand, and the crystals shattered in half, and they were quite large crystals, because he was wanting to come across and give this message about the children, because he really wants humanity to start to take responsibility for their children and to start processing the dense energies and send healing to the children. As many of the ET races are very, very, they're very unconditionally loving towards the children, and they see the children as the future of humanity, because they say the children don't really have all these codes in them yet from our society. So they're very, very precious, and they're precious souls, and that we need to care more about the children on this planet. So the Oracle of Mars was really, really intense about this. And he also told me that, you know, there were angels being sent in to help out the children currently. So I'm really, really thankful for that, because I'm passionate about children, and I do feel that we need to focus more on just sitting down and meditating and closing our eyes and channeling golden light to the children around the planet, so that we can help them and we can help ascend their frequency and help heal them. So I'm just trying to go through the different ET races here, because there's so many. I think once when I was like at the MUFON convention, I saw this guy, and I actually see people who shapeshift all the time. I can like see past their physical, what they project. And there's actually a secret to this. So it's called the peripheral nerve. Now, I read this article that said the peripheral nerve in people, it's weakened. And because of that, they can't see other light frequencies. So there's a very good technique to teach yourself how to see the spirit realm. So you're going to put your finger on your third eye, and you're going to look up and focus on your finger. And this is going to start to, and you're going to do this for at least a couple seconds every day until you can work up to a minute plus. And this is going to help strengthen the peripheral nerves of your eyes. And then you will be able to pick up the other light frequencies where spirits and ETs are. And there was a lot of genetic stuff done to humanity, to the physical human bodies, to go ahead and just, you know, keep them from knowing that there were certain predator races around and predator beings around, because that's perfect. You know, if these predator beings stay in the shadow and you don't know the predator, then you can't do anything about it. So there were specific races that tried to weaken some of the abilities genetically in the physical body, but they, you know, they weren't completely able to do that because of the cosmic laws. And I actually was born, so my mother was adopted from France by President Reagan's security guard and his close friend, and she was kept on the Edwards Air Force Base, where there was a lot of different things done to her, and that's where the Roswell bodies were kept. And I actually have strange eyes. My eyes can go like an owl's eyes. So I can see different, I can actually move my eyes, one to the side and keep looking straight, one to the other side and keep looking straight. So I tune them like lenses to see different things like auras in the spirit realms. And by doing this exercise, it really helps with this. I know I read a story about a guy who did a neodyme, if that's the right pronunciation, neodyme magnet here, but he had written an article about it when he regained his sanity. So I don't recommend doing a neodyme magnet, because he said when he did it that he basically, it lit him up so much where he could see the spirit realms. He actually was like walking in skyscrapers in New York, and he could see other buildings and other places, even things going into the sky, and he was like walking through them, and he was like having like, he just was in and out of realms because the magnet was so strong it lit him up too much. So you have to be careful with these things. You have to really work with your abilities, because if you completely light them up, just like the ETs were telling me when they were actually lighting people up at first, adults, it was too much for them. They were like losing it because there was too much input of information, and they didn't know how to control these abilities. They just thought they were crazy, so they went and got on antidepressants and got on medication to try to block it out, when actually it was just their abilities that were lighting up. So anyhow, the ETs told me that there was ET DNA that was put into my mother, so I was born different, born a hybrid, and that's why I have specific, you know, this ability, specific weird things with me, and that's why I can speak to all these different ET races. And they told me that there was this concoction of DNA that was created that they used on children. I think they said in the 70s and 80s, they called it the Magdalene concoction, and it was literally that they had taken all the DNA they possibly could from different races and created this mix, and they tried to create hybrid children, and then they put implants in these hybrids so that they could collect information from the realms and about the different ET races. So that was one of the projects that I actually went through as a child, and found myself in underground bases quite a lot until a certain age where I was able to actually empower myself. And it did, you know, it was really drastic to see some of the stuff in the bases because I cried a lot. It was really intense. I do have in my elbow, I have a microchip that you can actually see, and then I have a scar into the bone where you can see where it was injected and inserted within me. Then I have a microchip also in my leg, and I have a microchip in my neck, just to name a few of them. The one in my leg is around this big, and I have to actually put my leg down for it to pop out and you to see it. And so I was given microchips, you know, as a child. This one was actually done in an underground base when I was taken, and because of the whole programs going on, and I was giving the ET DNA, that I was being taken by you might say the negative races, brought to these underground bases, and then the races that are my kin would come back and take me and bring me back. So as a child, I was kind of passed back and forth, which was very chaotic and very, very drastic for me. And I've actually probably never come out and said this publicly whatsoever. I've kind of kept it to myself. And I found myself in the Dulce base, and I actually spoke to my friend Brad Olson about this. I found myself as a child in the Dulce base, which exists, and there was all sorts of genetic mutations being done, all sorts of things. So it was really overwhelming to see that as a child. And I actually got this chip from trying to get out of there, and then they brought me back and they gave me this chip and told me not to try to escape. And eventually I had to clear nanotech out of my body, and I was able to go ahead and use my abilities and free myself, so I couldn't be I couldn't be used as an asset anymore. And I know I talked to Laura about this a little bit because she knows a lot about this, and I couldn't talk about it for years because it was too emotional for me, what I went through. And it's really interesting because, you know, the whole thing with children too, there's a lot of children that are disappearing because they're actually being brought to these underground bases. So that's another thing I'm very passionate about, because I remember as a child I would see these, you know, missing children posters, and I'd see those children in underground bases. So I knew it was happening. It was a really, really hard thing to go through. But when I, you know, and trying to approach this after stepping into my power, and I know I've taken on many different bodies, including ET bodies, and going back to the fact that I have become empowered because I understand I'm God consciousness, and in the end, nowadays, being empowered beings don't get to use me or hurt me like they did as a child when I didn't, you know, I was just in this new body and was having all these different issues. So nowadays, in the God consciousness, I approach this in a manner of understanding that beings do certain specific things because they have lost their light and they're suffering. So I'm highly aware of this. So the last time that I was actually near Area 51, we were on a trip. Actually, I think I was on a trip here to Shasta, if I remember right. And so we stopped, and there was, of course, this little, I think it was like a UFO ET cafe, which they have some amazing artwork, I must say. And we stopped there, and I just could feel from Area 51, I could feel, you know, I could definitely feel the ETs. It was really interesting. I could feel the underground base, and instead of approaching it, you know, in a negative manner, I just asked, I said, why are you guys on this planet, and why are you guys doing this? And why are you guys, you know, causing suffering, and why have you been drawn to this planet? And they said to me, we've been drawn to the planet, and we're only allowed to be here because of humanity's karma. If humanity cleared the karma of the planet, and cleared the karma of themselves, and cleared the karma off the planet, transmuted it, we would have to leave the planet, and it would even help us to find the light again, and we really want them to find the light. It was a really incredible conversation I had with these beings, because even they wanted to ascend in the light. In fact, all the genetic stuff that they're doing, all these genetic weird testing stuff, which I saw on these bases. It's really hard to put in words what I saw. They told me they're doing this because they're literally trying to find the codes to get out of the system and reascend. So then I said to them, I said, you know, the solution is really to stop doing this. The solution is to, you know, reascend into the light. And they said, oh, genetically we can't reascend into the light because of the things that we've done, and we fell far from the light, so we can't do that. But then they said that, I was talking to them, and then they said that, you know, humanity, when it clears its karma, they will either leave the planet or they will reascend into light, because humanity will be compassionate enough because it's in God's source energy and actually channel them the light they need to ascend. So that was the solution for all of the negative factions of ETs that are plaguing this planet right now. It's literally that they're trying to force their way out of this system by using different technology to try to crack genetic codes by the higher light beings that they instilled, that they only have the codes. The higher light beings only have the codes to these, you know, to our DNA and all of that. Instead of trying to steal it, and instead of trying to hack into it, force it to and use it so that they can be released, it's really important that they understand that they will never be able to do that. And I told them this. I said, you know, God's source comes through me, and I had this compassion on them because it was really, really interesting to see how they had descended a long time ago from being these beautiful interdimensional beings that had fallen from the light into what they are now, trying to force their way back into the realms by genetically using humanity and testing on them. Because they know that humanity is the key. It's like humanity's here, then they're here. Humanity needs to step it up and ascend into God's source, so that we can pull them up. And everything, in the end, with everything I've went through, even through from negative races and even people who weren't kind to me, I do believe in the end that everything deserves redemption and deserves to return to the light of God. And I feel beings, and sometimes they suffer so much. They're suffering every moment. How could I wish suffering on such beings? That would be very unkind of me to do. That wouldn't be fair of me. And in God consciousness, you understand that being suffering, you don't want to send them more suffering. So the solution is about healing and ascension. So we have these different layers. So I was also shown this. I had this whole conversation with these beings, and I actually cried over it. And I remember coming out of the cafe, everyone was kind of looking at me, I was crying. And of course the people around me knew that I was like talking to beings, because everybody around me is usually used to that anyhow. And I was crying over this, and then so I went and I was just in the car after that, and I was speaking to God's source, because I do, and it's like God's source comes through and shows me all of this. And God said that we are in the mid-world. Humanity's in the mid-world, or mid-earth. That's how it was expressed. So humanity is to gather the light of the cosmos. Think about it like this, that as a farmer goes into his field and he gathers his crops, we have lost these ancient practices of where we would sit and gather the cosmic light and bring it into ourselves. And God showed me this. And when I say God, God's this ultimate, beautiful, divine, unconditional love force that flows through everything, that shows me all these secrets and allows me to do all these things. And God showed me that we are supposed to take, how can I put this? We're supposed to actually just gather the light, bring it into ourselves, and then reach a higher frequency and keep gathering the light, and then send it down into the lower frequencies where those who have lost their light, like these ET races that have lost their light, are imprisoned in. So we're here to gather that light, bring it into ourselves, enlighten ourselves. To become enlightened means to be filled with light, and then take that light and pass it down to the ones who have lost their light underneath this dimension. How can I put this? The frequencies are, so there's humanity, but then there are even a lower frequency than humanity. And so this was the solution that I was shown. And so I asked God, I said, how is that going to happen. I'm sure a lot of people are mad at these beings that have lost their light and are doing these things. And God said, well, everybody's doing terrible things to each other. Even humanity, they're feeding off of their families, their children, each other all the time energetically. Everything's feeding off of each other. And they need to come to the divine understanding that everything deserves to reascend and everything deserves redemption in the end. And the instant that people, really just start doing good for themselves and others, I don't hold any of their past against them. That's my unconditional love for them. That's what unconditional love is. So I came to this beautiful understanding after interacting with these beings who had lost their light, of how even in the end that they deserve us to help them reascend as we ascend. And this is the solution. Because the thing is that no matter whether it's dark beings or no matter whether it's light beings or that person across the planet, we're all divinely connected. And we cannot, I even had this whole thing where the ET showed me something that was quite magical. They said, that person in a third world country who is dying of starvation, people here that have houses and that have everything they need, they're actually feeling their emotions on some level and energy. So everything affects us. Even that person across the planet that is struggling, it affects us. And so we need to come to this divine understanding, and we need to understand that this is why we need to start caring about people in third world countries and about even beings that have lost their light rather than being angry at them. We need to start channeling in the divine golden light because we are creator beings, and we can create healing for ourselves, for our planet, and for everything. And this is the divine plan of God's source, which is this eternal energy that is our souls, that lives within us every moment. And we need to start tapping into that. That's going to be the solution for our enlightenment and the ascension of our planet. Sure, we have so many beings helping us, but ultimately it's our choice to, each one of us is up to ourselves to make that divine choice to ascend and to become responsible creator beings that choose to heal our planet and each other and ourselves. So I want to just continue on. I'm not sure how long I have to speak more because I know we have to close up the building soon. I literally have had some experiences with beings on the other side of the sun currently. So this has to be within the last 4 years. I started encountering these beings behind the sun. So these beings behind the sun, they were similar to, they looked very human-like, and they were taking the light of the sun and shooting it towards Earth. And they were telling me that the chemtrails were done because they're trying to block out the frequency of the sun, because there's our entire Milky Way system, our entire cosmic system is an ancient clock. And there's this specific timeline that's happening of ascension. So they said that the powers that be that rule this planet that lost their light want to keep that from happening. So they said chemtrails actually were, the aluminum or the metals in the chemtrails were actually, when they shoot the, how can I put this in human words? When they shoot the light towards Earth, it was bouncing off because the metals were reflecting it off like a mirror. So they said that the powers that be that have control of this planet know this, and that's why they did chemtrails, because they were aware of this ascension timeline, divine ascension timeline that was predicted literally eons ago. And we have the remnants of those predictions in some religions. And of course, religion is compromised, so never believe it to be the real truth. So they told me this, and they said that the sun's a portal to another universe. And I was actually able to pass through the sun and go on the other side of the sun, which there was a lot of different beings. A lot of these beings actually looked very human-like, but they didn't look past the age of 30 years old. And they said that they come sometimes to this planet and they walk around and do specific things on this planet because they're trying to help with the ascension of the planet, and that they had chosen that from, eons ago, that they had chosen to help out for the ascension. So the sun's a portal. It's a literal portal. It's connected to Saturn. Originally, it was like in the center of Saturn, and that's a whole subject I'll have to address in the near future. But they said to pass through that portal that you have to have built up enough light. Once you built up enough light, you can literally go and pass through the sun. And then that brings me back to the whole story of this. There's this ancient, I think, is it Greek or something, a story of where this guy flew too close to the sun and his wings burned off or something like that. And I was like, oh, maybe that's about the portal to this in the sun. That's very, very interesting. Maybe he didn't have enough light energy, because they showed me that to pass through the portal of the sun, you have to have enough light energy. So there's also these beings that I just don't know what to name them or label them, because they didn't tell me what their names were. Because again, when beings interact with me, they don't tell me, oh, hey, I'm a draconian or reptilian. It doesn't happen like that. They have specific energy codes, and that's how we know each other. So these beings are shooting light currently towards the planet via the sun. So those are some of the ETs I encountered recently too, that are helping out with the ascension process. I also encountered I think it's I got out of my body. I was actually gone from my body for 2 days. This was quite an interesting thing, because my aunt was a bit afraid I wouldn't come back. So, because my body didn't move for 2 days. When I leave, I literally come back at a certain point, but that's probably the longest I've been out of my body. And I went to, this is when I went to the moon. I encountered the pyramids, but I was going to Saturn. I went to, I think it's Heighten or something like that, the moon Titan, that's around Saturn. And I was able to, there was a whole bunch of ET, just mix of ET races there. Some that don't even come to Earth, and they were just, they're having a good time. It was really, really awesome. They were just interacting and having a good time. And they were telling me, oh, we're just waiting for the time machine, Saturn, to come back on. Until then, we're just hanging out here. So I encountered them. It was really funny. I don't know if anybody, and I tell my friends this stuff, and then they send me movies, because I didn't grow up watching TV, and then I'll tell my friends this, and then they'll send me a movie and be like, oh, we saw this, what you're talking about, like in this movie. So it reminded me kind of like in Men in Black, just where all those ETs were hanging out. They're like, oh, we're just hanging out until like the time machine comes back on and humanity becomes once again, they become ascended. They told me that. They were like, oh, we're just here since a long time. And they we're having a really, really good time. So that was a nice experience. And I know I'm supposed to do galactic history, but it's like really awesome just to talk about the different ETs. To go back, I think I started where I was speaking about how I went to this MUFON get-together. This was years ago. So I was living in Sausalito at the time, and we decided to go to a MUFON conference. And so we all went to a MUFON conference somewhere in San Francisco, if I remember right. And it was a really interesting experience. I really loved it. So I remember just realizing that MUFON was full of people who are ETs or cloaked as humans. And I looked across at this one guy, and he looked like Dino the dinosaur. And I didn't even say anything. I just kind of looked. I was like, oh, I've never met this specimen before. And he walked up to me, and in physical words, he goes, I know you see me, and I'm the last of my kind, and I look like Dino the dinosaur. And it was really funny. He said, he goes to me, he goes, I'm like 10,000 years old. I'm the last of my kind. And he's like, I'm just hanging out with the humans and, and having fun. And I was like, wow, thank you for telling me that. Because, I just saw him and I couldn't stop staring at him. And he knew telepathically that I could see him. So I had that experience. I had actually a lot of experiences too, with the reptilians, talking about living in that town in Sausalito was hilarious. So one day I decided to go to Starbucks, and of course Sausalito has a lot of people from Google there, and a lot of very just well-known people and stuff like that. So I'm sitting in the Starbucks, and By the way, I have to tell you the story of my mailman being reptilian and how I really messed that up. So I'm sitting in Starbucks and I'm just waiting for my tea because I always like ordering green tea. And I put spirulina powder in my green tea and drink it, and it tastes pretty bad, but I like it, how it feels to my body. So I'm sitting in Starbucks, and when I go into this state, I can go into this state, and I've done it on a few different shows where people can feel it. In fact, when I was on Gaia, it happened, and George Norick, he said it, I think, on camera, how he felt it, and I went really high up. So I'm there, and when I was younger, I had a hard time actually coming down to Earth. And I think the last time I had a problem coming down to Earth, I was in Egypt, and my business manager was literally tapping my head saying, come back to the planet. So sometimes I go up, and when I was younger, I was like, whoa, I'm up here. And so I'm sitting in Starbucks, and I literally see this, and I'm not going to say who he was part of a big company, and I'm not going to say who it was. They were sitting in the corner, and they had a briefcase, and he just looked like, businessman, but when I looked at him, I was like, oh, you're a reptilian, and he looked at me, and he knew that I knew, and he literally got up against the wall and put his briefcase, this very large man put the briefcase between us, and it was like, he was really disturbed, and he's like telepathically talking to me. He's like, are you going to say anything out loud? And I was like, no, I'm not going to say anything out loud to him. And he's like, well, I'm really worried you're going to say something out loud right now to everyone in here like that. And it was like a really interesting experience, because then he like gave out the signal of like kind of like asking all of the other reptilians in the area to come. So I see a whole bunch of people start to come in, but they're like not humans. They're reptilians come in and sit around. And I'm just like, guys, I'm not going to say anything. It's good. You don't have to worry. And because I have the ability, and we all have this ability to decloak them. We can literally decloak them. So sometimes, if they know they'll get afraid. So I just speak to them, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm not your enemy. I'm not going to do this. So so it becomes a smooth experience, because it can become very, very intense when they're around. And this happened with my mailman years ago. So I was talking to my aunt about it, and the mailman, he's, at the post office, he was definitely a reptilian. And so we just went in there, we sent him massive amount of love vibes, and he was like, I don't want this right now, because sometimes some of them just don't want to accept the love energy. And so I was sending it to him, and he was really upset about that. He's like, I didn't ask for these love frequencies right now. I even chose Ascension, and that reptilian kept my mail for 2 months. He would not give me my mail. I had to go back and telepathically talk to him and say, I'm sorry. And I understand that, I shouldn't have done that. And then he gave me my mail. So I've had a lot of interesting experiences with different beings, and I probably could talk about it for the next week non-stop of all these different experiences, but those are just to give you guys a few. And I know I'm supposed to talk about multidimensionality, but I thought I'd go into these different experiences that I've never put out there before. And yeah, I've had quite the adventure. But I want to remind everyone that do the exercises that I have encouraged if you feel aligned with that, and really just work on understanding your body. I know I have to wrap it up here. The body is a divine temple, and we weren't meant to suffer on this planet. We were meant to have a beautiful, beautiful experience, and we have lost ourselves. And all of these realms were created as playgrounds for us. They weren't created to hurt us or destroy us, but when we lost ourselves, we quarantined ourselves in this system, and it's time for us to really become the creator and master divine beings that we are, and remember that, and merge that into this 3D physical body of ours, and knowledge of ours, and mind of ours, and really light ourselves up. And then we can release ourselves from this suffering, because God gave us all of these beautiful realms and creation to have a beautiful time in, because it would be boring just to stay in the realm of spirits constantly. I've been there. Like, it's great, but then you want to go explore stuff. That's the thing. So these realms were created with divine purpose, and when we lost ourselves, we're failing to recognize that, and it'll be okay as long as we reascend into our divine selves and do our self-work. And with that being said, I'm going to end this talk, and thank you all for listening.